The most famous Frost family member is Emma, but she isn't the only telepath of her family, far from it. This video came to mind since I'm working on a video about the 2003 Emma Frost solo series. Adrienne Frost is Emma Frost's psychopathic sister, that makes evil Emma Frost look mentally stable, with the Frost family having a decently big role in the 2003 series, who have appeared before that comic and after it. Therefore, before we get to that video, I wanted to give context as to who her family members were, since they're all pretty interesting characters outside of that comic, and of course also in that comic, which we'll touch on because it's pretty important to the Frost family since it is all about Emma Frost. Adrienne would be introduced in the Generation X series. With at this point Emma was more heroic, and would be the CEO of Frost Enterprises, and the headmistress of the Massachusetts Academy that Generation X worked out of. Adrienne Frost would debut in Generation X issue 48 from 1998. Which, by the way, is the issue that Marvel Unlimited cuts off at. In fact, it cuts off for almost her entire story in this series, which means I had to, find these issues not so legally. Don't judge me, Marvel, this is your own fault. Why'd you cut it off at issue 47? You made me support pirates. Emma Frost and Sean Cassidy, aka Banshee, are dealing with lack of funds for the school, which is worrying since it's an important place for mutant children to feel accepted. This series made a very strong point as to why it is important for Emma to help these students, since she didn't have anyone to guide her as a kid, which she believes may have played a part in her eventual fall to villainy. Although Emma is still a bit grey, where she's more than willing to mind control investors into giving the school money, which Sean is very much against for moral reasons. Is it wrong? I kinda think she should have done it. They're rich billionaires, they can afford to help a school. Go mind control Tony Stark. Anyways, Banshee talks her out of it, but she does think that there is an actual legitimate way of getting the funds, which isn't her parents since they had disowned her, but instead a different family member, her sister, who they specify is Adrienne, not Cordelia, who's her other sister. Emma would give an explanation to her origin for the time, that being her and her sisters grew up very close in their home, all of whom would manifest mutant powers, but Emma's was the most blatant. While Emma was institutionalized by their father, Adrienne would rise to business power, becoming very successful. There's actually a lot here that won't slot into the later canon, the biggest being that there was only 3 siblings, when as we later learn, there was actually 4 of them, and they also weren't very close. But for the time being, this is the origin we're playing with, but you'll see a change since if Emma's origin changes, Adrienne's origin also obviously changes too. In the following issue, we see Emma go to Adrienne's company called Meridian Enterprises, and no, it's not the real-life bank. Emma storms into her sister's office, where off the bat we see Adrienne is cruel in how she talks to her staff, threatening to fire her employees for a mediocre job and using harsh language with them. Adrienne is quite amused by Emma needing her help since they haven't seen each other nearly a decade, to where she even puts on a spectacle to ask her assistant the date to make sure it's not April Fool's Day. Emma goes off saying that she never asked for money when they were growing up, needing to find her own path, and that she isn't asking for money for her own financial standing, but for students, and was hoping to lean to her because they're family. At first, Adrienne rejects her sister, but Emma leaves her purse on her desk, where Adrienne shows her own powers by touching the bag. Adrienne's mutant powers is that she's a psychic, able to get mental flashes from whatever she touches. And from Emma's bag, she's able to read Emma, learning about Generation X and the nature of the school. She has Emma sent back in. Now knowing the truth, she's interested in actually helping, but under one condition. The issue ends with us learning what that condition is. Adrienne is now the co-head mistress of the academy. Dun dun dun. The following issues would include this as a subplot, showing the dynamic of the Frost sisters, where at first it seems as if they're bonding as Emma is overworked with the increase of students, where Adrienne seems to be very supportive of her. She is a bit condescending, but the way how it's played, it seems as if it's like a genuine reunion. We also see that they're both into branding because they can't be too closely associated with Charles Xavier since Onslaught. Emma gets the idea of using Nate Gray since seeing him on the news, as he has a last name Gray, a last name that is often associated with Jean Grey, a far more respected mutant than Charles Xavier at this point. Also, side note, anyone else remember when Nate Gray and Madeline Pryor were a thing? That's his mom's clone. Either she's his aunt or his second mom. Either way, that's nasty. Adrienne's role in this position is pretty minor. She's around as a supporting character for a few issues. We see her advocate for Generation X to Emma as being ready to go on a mission to save Banshee. She's pretty confident in the team. However, the character very clearly has some dissonance with her sister that is not really addressed. We also have this great moment in issue 52, where Adrienne thinks she's hallucinating because a pair of mutant children are pretending to be Spider-Ham and Doctor Doom with their powers. Issues 53 and issue 54, Adrienne sends Generation X a match report to retrieve something for her without Emma's approval, which starts a seed of doubt for the sisters. She also for some reason sent Paladin with Generation X. Why is Paladin here? The thing they were sent to retrieve was a sword, which Adrienne has told Emma was the sword that murdered her husband, and that she wanted to use her psychic powers on it to be able to be with him again mentally. Under the impression it was something emotionally important to Adrienne, Emma allows this. But we see that's not entirely true. Adrienne was the one who hired someone to murder her husband, Steven, with it being kept a secret from Generation X and her sister. This being the first steps of revealing Adrienne is not just playing into sister rivalry with Emma, but is an actual villain. Issue 55 is an issue about the Hellions. Adrienne doesn't actually appear, but everything is crazy. The X-Men are fighting Generation X, who are just like the Hellions, with them being led by someone who claims to be Emma Frost, but she's dressed like the White Queen again. It's very clear something is wrong. Issue 56 has the real Emma Frost interfere in everything, breaking an illusion that we see that was actually caused by Adrienne, who is now wearing a costume similar to her sister when Emma was a villain, and reveals that she's now taking the part of the White Queen in an inner circle of the Hellfire Club. She explains that she didn't want to be a part of the school, she just wanted to see Emma have to witness her students die again, only to get bored of waiting because they kept on surviving their missions, which adds a level of humor because she kept on sending them on missions during her time as co-head mistress, which now seems to have implied that she was doing that not because she was confident in the team or trying to get them ready to be actual heroes after Generation X, but because she wanted them to die on those missions, and they kept on coming back alive. Anyways, with that, Adrienne just vanishes but promises to return. The character's first run as being a villain is a bit rushed, since she's introduced and then becomes a supporting character for a few issues, only to then become a villain at the very end of her run, and then just pieces out. Just disappears. I think the character had some promise here, but it is definitely just crammed in the end with the character being revealed to be a villain, where I think the character being a villain should have been more gradually set up. In fact, I'm not even entirely sure when she was introduced that she was meant to be a villain. A part of me thinks that she was actually just meant to be the co-head mistress and have that weird rivalry dynamic with Emma, which I thought was kind of interesting. She wouldn't return until issues 67 to 70 from the year 2000. We started off strong with Adrienne in London, after a one-night stand where she seems to be high and acting very unhinged post-orgasm, with her fling wanting more than sex, but she's not interested. So uninterested that she kills him. This is how different Adrienne is now. Before she was a cunning villain in the background, manipulating her sister to see her trauma, but now she's a bit of a nutbag. She kind of went from Lex Luthor to Joker. Adrienne returns to the States to spy on her sister's school, still wanting to see her sister fail. We learn her time in the inner circle didn't last long, as she's a true scam artist stealing money from the London branch of the Hellfire Club. Now they're coming after her and she needs to hide out, and goes to Emma and Sean for help, where Banshee is very much against the idea of helping Adrienne. But she has evidence of the students of the Academy being mutants, which if you don't know is secret, and if Adrienne is harmed by the Hellfire Club, the evidence will be leaked out, meaning Generation X is forced to help her. Adrienne in this position would continue to try to torture her sister, introducing mutant hate and fear into the Academy with Emma unable to do anything about it. However, the last straw will be Adrienne's ploy of setting off a bomb, killing Generation X member Synch. In issue 70, Emma had enough of Adrienne's antics, and seeing no other way out of it, she kills her. Although we don't actually see her do it, Emma says she's done with her and Adrienne afterwards just disappears from the comic. In issue 75, we get confirmation Emma did kill her own sister, by just shooting her, not even worth a mutant fight. Adrienne would actually stay dead, and wouldn't return until the 2003 Emma Frost solo series, which takes place before Emma was a part of the Hellfire Club and long before Adrienne was killed. This series heavily changes Emma's backstory, and by proxy, her entire family and her sister. Adrienne is now the cold sister, cruel and eager to take over the family business. She's also trying to be manipulative off the bat, right away. She is just the worst, with Emma not even trusting her as a child. Adrienne would also play a role in her brother's attempted suicide, as she would out him as being gay to the family, which she knew because of her powers, which we kinda vaguely see get developed. She knows things that confuse Emma as to how she knows them, but it's not really explained. This series would reveal that Emma isn't British, but had simply absorbed some personality character traits from a British telepath named Astrid, which would mean that Adrienne is also not British, which creates some continuity shuffles because Adrienne was definitely British in Generation X, unless maybe she just wanted everybody to think she was. Adrienne is also a French woman's name, but they're also not French. Adrienne is surprisingly still very much dead, which is an oddity for comics, as Emma had refused for either of her sisters to be reborn during Krakoa. Adrienne feels like an attempt to fill the gap that Emma Frost left when she became a good guy, but it doesn't really work for a lot of reasons, and the biggest is the fact that almost everything tied to the character happens off-panel. Her murdering her husband, her joining the Hellfire Club, her even becoming co-head mistress of the Academy happens off-panel. Her being murdered even happens off-panel originally. Her powers being developed happens off-panel. Her becoming the White Queen. Her stealing from the Hellfire Club. Her going to drugs. Almost every single beat with this character happens off-panel. Which, yes, I think stories can happen off-panel and you can address them afterwards on occasion. But for Adrienne, it's essentially her entire story happens off-panel. Perhaps if we had actually seen these story elements play out, the character could have maybe worked as a villain. Maybe not long-lasting, but definitely deserving more of what she actually got. But because everything is so vague with the character, it makes it kind of impossible to even care about the character, or perhaps even find her to be a threat. I mean, yes, she did kill a member of Generation X, but Emma killed her pretty easily. Which, yet again, technically happened off-panel. Yes, we saw it later on, but it originally happened off-panel too. So it's like every single thing with this character, we don't even see. To be honest, I kind of wish she wasn't even a villain. Maybe her and Emma could have stayed co-head mistresses. Because I actually really like that dynamic between the two sisters. But when she became a villain, she just kind of became wahaha, and then she became fully unhinged. I really don't think the character will ever come back, because if she was to come back, she would have likely came back during Krakoa. But she didn't, and she's been dead since the 90s. Well, early 2000s, exactly 2000. But still, that's been 25 years, and she's still dead, which is very surprising for any comic character, and when that happens, it usually means they're going to stay dead. And that's it. Like always, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!